and things going on in town. Currently, the Cumberland Historical Society, I've been a past president back in the eighties, and what was Mill Pond Garden Club and West Cumberland United Methodist Church. And I've worked on the middle school committee for the design committee when it was being built. Cool. That's enough.
Peter Bingham, I'm representing the planning board. I chair of that. I was joking with Steve today that this is my fifth comprehensive plan. And I've done it either is in different times as a representative from the school board, a town councilor, or another time on the planning board. So hopefully can provide some institutional memory before one puts me in one.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy McBrady. My husband and I live over in Cumberland Forsyth. We've been there for their 17th year. We have two kids in the school system. My husband is a graduate of Greeley High School from Lewiston originally. And I really looking forward to this process. Thank you.
Well, I'm Bill, Town Council. I'm happy to be here and happy to see everyone here, and I look forward to having a great time together and learning more about you and your input, and your particular thoughts on how the future coming will look now for 10 years from now. So, welcome everybody.
And my name is Adam Doherty. I have lived in Cumberland for 40 years now. Graduated in 1994 from Greeley. I also have two kids that are school age, 10 and 12. Coaching all of their sports, basketball and things like that. Which I bring up to say I do have to leave early, 7:30, because I practice tonight. Other than that, also just excited to get involved finally. I've been here my entire life, so I'm looking forward to being part of the process.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Dresser. I live over on Blanchard with my wife and two young kids, preschool age, but they will be soon. I graduated from Muskie with a degree in policy and planning and get to work on it somewhat on the federal side in the day job. So just really been meaning to and wanting to get involved municipally on my own behalf for a long time. And given some recent events, I really decided that I want to get involved. So I'm really excited to be here with you all as well.
Hi, I'm Tig Hilton. I'm from the town council. I live in Cumberland Center on Main Street. One kiddo in the school system, one I'm hoping they accept in the fall, but he's wildly naughty, so we'll see what happens there. This is my first comprehensive plan. I am so excited, mostly just to kind of be a sponge. I think Bob sort of talked about that a little bit, but really just kind of hear and watch the process play out and really understand how all of the different threads connect themselves. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone because there are so many committees and there's a lot of time and energy and effort that goes into them. So just thank you for throwing your hat in the ring to be here and actually being here. Go for it, Amber.
Exactly. Bill Falls, live up on Main Street, 3 doors down from her. I do admit that. So been in town since about 1994. 2 kids out through the school system. Wife's teacher in school, in the middle school. Was on the 2012 comp plan. So good to kind of come back and see where we were and where we are now. And see how those things how those long-term things we talked about then have actually kind of dropped into place, which is pretty interesting. So happy to be here and work with you.
Great. I'm Jesse Lamar Vincent. I've got kiddos in kindergarten and 3rd grade. Been living in Cumberland on Range Road for about 8 years now. I'm here representing the school board, of which I'm a member, and I'm also part of the LCC on our sustainability and orchard subcommittees. So very invested in making Cumberland an amazing place, and yeah, really excited to be part of this process.
I'm Evan Sweetser. I live on Blanchard Road at Sweetser's Apple Barrel. Lived here most of my life, except for college. And I previously served on the housing task force with some people. And I was on the fire department in high school for 4 or 5 years. And so I'm just excited to volunteer some of my time and talents, hopefully, so.
Hi, I'm Steve Moriarty. I live at 12 Oak Street, just a couple hundred yards from where we are right now. I've lived in town for a little over 41 years. Our two kids have long since left the school system. I'm a retired attorney, former state legislator, former planning board member, former town councilor, and I served on one comp plan committee back in the late 80s.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Sullivan. I'm the administrative assistant for planning, code enforcement, assessing. I actually grew up in town. I graduated from Greeley in '86. I've been in municipal government 30 years. I don't live in town now, but I am, it's my hometown, so I do care. But I'm just here to take notes.
Yeah.
Hi, Lorraine Reardon. I'm here on behalf of the planning board. So I serve under Peter. I think I'm in the minority. We sweeped into Cumberland in 2019, just before the pandemic hit in 2020. Couldn't have built the house that we have now because it would be unaffordable. I married a Navy guy, so that's why I don't really have a hometown because I followed him around for 20 plus years. But we did do a tour in Brunswick back in the 90s. And when we were choosing where to retire, I said, we're going back to Maine. And we picked Cumberland. So I'm a chosen Mainer, a chosen resident of Cumberland. So I think I bring a different and unique perspective in that I didn't grow up here, didn't raise my children here, but chose to be here. And there's a lot of reasons why I did. And I'm hoping that those get reflected in some of the things that we do here in the comprehensive plan.
I am Janice Spalding, Public Life. I am Public Information and Community Outreach Officer for the United States Attorney's Office. Private life, I grew up in Cumberland. I grew up in the center on Greeley Road. Went away for many, many years for ran screaming when I was 18 to Boston. I came back several years later and purchased a home in 2016 in West Cumberland, which is where I currently reside. And my mother has lived on Greeley Road since 1964 and is still there and not leave unless she's quote unquote carried out in the pine box. So yeah, we have roots in Cumberland.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I guess up front, and this may be a little bit more challenging, but one of the first things we need to accomplish is electing our officers. So someone who's not me, who will run the show, call meetings to order and keep everything kind of running on time and on schedule. So normally how this works, and we're gonna get some good training from Ben in a minute, but I figured we'd elect officers first, is that someone makes a nomination or we talk about maybe someone who's interested in it. Someone can nominate them. We would second the nomination. We would just accept nominations until they run out. If people are nominating people, yeah, tell me how it goes.
I'm ready to make a nomination when you're ready.
All right, go for it.
I would nominate Steve Moriarty for the position of chair. I wanted to jump out and get in front of this, not because I want to deny anybody the opportunity to participate, but as I look at the membership of this committee, I realized that Steve rose to the top primarily because he's retired. I'll make it slap upside the head afterwards, but I think it's important that we have somebody here who has the time to organize what we're going to do and the extent of what it takes to stand behind this task. And it is a task. I've been involved with this before. So I hope nobody feels offended by my making this nomination, but Steve is a balanced individual. He's going to see through the rise and the fall of the individuals here, and he's going to help steer the process. He's going to bring the best out in us. And I think that's probably the most important thing to say about Steve. So I'm delighted to nominate Steve for the task of chairman of this committee.
So if I'm correct, we would need a second to the nomination. Okay.
Yeah.
And then any other nominations?
I move nomination cease.
I was gonna ask, sorry, for point of information, does anyone else have an interest in it? Burning interest.
We have a motion to cease nominations. Seconded.
You accept them.
Okay.
That's how
I don't usually do this. This is why I wanted it done first. So now we take a vote, right? All those,
Vote to cease the nomination.
we vote to
And then,
cease the nominations. So all in favor of ceasing the nomination? It's me. And now we vote for our chair. So all of those in favor of Steve Moriarty for chair of the Comprehensive Plan Committee.
Mhm.
Steve, you're it.
and nobody even asked.
Would you like to handle the vice chair
I will.
nomination?
Just a word of
Thank
thanks
you.
to all of you. Appreciate the nomination, and my mission will be to live up to Bob's speech. The greatest extent I can. So the next up on the agenda is the selection of a vice chair of the committee. The vice chair's role is basically to take over whenever I'm either not able to be here or sick or what have you. So I'll open the floor to nominations for vice chair. Kathy.
I'd like to nominate Peter Bannon.
I'm going to decline because I think it's very important, looking around the table, that you folks are gonna be the ones that are gonna have to live with what we come up with at the end of the plan. I've done my thing, and I'm here again to do institutional thing and kind of guide when we get off the track a little bit, but I think it's important to have a younger person who's going to have to live with this. So I dearly love to keep the trains running on time, but I think it's important to have a new perspective as vice chair.
Other nominations.
Thank you, though.
Even though I don't know him, I would say Scott, based on his job title, I think. Sorry, that's the only thing I have to say. Seems like you'd be a good fit for it.
I would be happy to serve with you folks. That's appropriate. It would be my first time serving as a vice chair, but like I said, I want to make a difference. So I would be happy to do that.
Is there a second to Scott's nomination?
I am certainly not retired.
Okay, so Jesse, you second the nomination? Any further nominations? Are there any motions?
I'll move the nomination cease.
Okay, thank you. Second to that motion?
Sorry. Oh, you wanted to nominate?
There's no second.
I was gonna recommend Evan Sweetser being a longtime resident.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I can decline it.
Yes.
I'm just very busy outside of work. And
Okay.
I absolutely love to, but thank you.
Right, we have
Appreciate
one
that.
pending nomination, and Peter, you were making a motion, I think.
Yeah, to nomination cease.
Okay, is there a second to that? Thank you, Bob. Those in favor of ceasing nominations, so indicate. And that motion carries unanimously. So Scott, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
You're up.
Congratulations.
Auspicious honor.
Lots of pay comes with it.
All right, so we're a special committee. And as we've heard, as we went around, we went from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of experience here in the town. And we're fairly large in number, with 17 members. We're about to take on a fairly complicated, but very, very important task. But with that goes some legal baggage that you might not be accustomed to in your normal personal lives, or any other groups with which you're associated. And to be precise, it's called the Right to Know Law, which has been a statute on the books for some decades now. And you've probably heard the term, but here to give us some more information not only about the law, but about its impact upon us and our contact with each other from this night on, how we do that and what we do and don't do. Ben McCall, our town attorney from the firm Jensen Baird, which has represented the town for as long as I can remember.
70 years, I think. After that, which is not how old I am. Steve, I was hoping you were just gonna do my entire presentation for me. I apologize for standing behind the podium. I would prefer to sit there, but I don't think this clicker actually works, so I'll blame it on the technology. As Steve mentioned, or maybe. As Steve mentioned, my name is Ben McCall. I'm a partner at Jensen Baird, partner at Henry, the last two names. No, that's fine. We're a firm in Portland, Maine. We have a government services group that has been representing municipalities, including Cumberland, for since the firm's inception back in 1952, I think. And apologies in advance to Peter and to Lorraine and to Tig and to Bob, who have heard me give the spiel about the Freedom of Access Act, both in the last couple of months. But as Steve mentioned, the Comprehensive Plan Committee is an official committee of the town of Cumberland. You are municipal officials now in that capacity. And because of that, we thought it would be a good idea just to go over briefly the ins and outs of the Freedom of Access Act and how it applies to this committee. And I don't want this to be a lecture, so please ask questions along the way, and then we'll allow you to get move on to cookies and apples and the rest of the business. So the one caveat I'll give to this is I'm going to try and hit all the high points of the law. There will be a couple of points that won't be applicable to this committee for a whole variety of reasons, but I want to discuss them just so you're aware of the ramifications and just, well, frankly, the presentation would be incomplete without those. So without further ado, I want to talk first about public records. FOA, which is the Freedom of Access Act. It is not the Freedom of Information Act, which is its federal counterpart. Has two big subsections. The first relates to public records. So that term is defined as broadly as you can possibly imagine. I'll read it. Any written, printed, or graphic matter, or any mechanical or electrical data from which information can be obtained that's in possession or custody of a public official. That includes all of you sitting around the table, and which relates to government business. So that is an extremely broad category of information, and for good reason. The whole point of a right to know law, or in some states they're known as sunshine laws, is just that. It's to make sure that members of the public are able to access information that pertains to how their governments are operating in a whole different, whole variety of contexts. There are exceptions to public records. So just because, for instance, if Chip Rumsey, the police chief, calls us up and there's a request for a police report, and that police report includes a social security number for some reason, that's redacted from that report before it's released. There's other information to redact that too. For instance, employment records, municipal employees, the vast majority of records that relate to their employment are confidential and they can't be released even if they're requested. There is, for those of you who are really interested, there is a very handy tool the legislature creates. I have the URL there, and you can go and look at every single one of over 300 statutory exceptions. It certainly keeps us busy when trying to figure out whether a requested document can and should be released or not. So, how are public records requested? And this is pertinent to you, believe it or not. I was saying this to the planning board earlier this week. It may be the case you serve a very important role in the future of this town. And for good reason, there are going to be a lot of people in town who are interested in keeping up with the topics that you're discussing, the work that you're doing, the information that you're gathering as part of this process. So it may be the case that along the way, you get an email or a text message, or even someone bumps into you at Hanford and says, hey, I saw that or heard that, the comp plan committee was talking about this document. Could I have a copy of that? I'm really, interested in finding out more. That is in effect a request for a public record under the Freedom of Access Act. There's no special form that's required under state law, even though the town provides a form, makes that available on the website in order to streamline things a bit. But the practice pointer, as I like to call them for all of you, is that if someone, in the public asks you for information, one, it's most likely public information that they're entitled to. So you can do a couple of things, or should do a couple of things. If you know where that information is, if it's on the website that the town is maintaining, feel free to direct them there. That's perfectly appropriate. If it's something that you don't know about whether it exists, whether it should be released or can be released, or frankly, where it's available. Jen Doughton, who's the town clerk, is also the town's Freedom of Access Act officer. And so all of those requests, if you run into someone at Hanford, send an email over to Bridget and to Jen. All of their email addresses are available online. Just let them know that that's happened, because that allows Jen to find those records or talk to those in town hall who have those records, and make sure that the town fulfills the obligations under the statute to provide that information if this information will be provided. In case you need to know, in case you're making your own requests someday, state law allows the town to charge 10 cents a page for an 8.5 by 11 black and white copy if you are actually requesting a physical piece of paper. Obviously, if you're requesting electronic documents, those can't be charged for obvious reasons. The town can also charge $25 an hour for staff time that's used in compiling these requests, but the first 2 hours are free. This serves a pretty practical purpose. Doesn't happen all the time, but in every town, every town has this pop up from time to time. There will be a serial requester who asks for documents that they're perfectly entitled to, but finding those documents, especially if they're older, takes a lot of time and effort. And it's acknowledging that municipal officials and staff are busy, and those are your tax dollars at work. So another point, just to remind, another reason why keeping the town and town staff informed if you're ever the direct recipient of one of these requests is because the town has 5 days under the statute to both acknowledge the request officially and to deny the request on one or more grounds if that's appropriate. So timing is important. If we miss that deadline for whatever reason, that could lead to an appeal. I'll talk about those in just a second. Town staff aren't required, though. We're not required to provide summaries of records. We're not required to create new records if they don't exist. The whole function of the statute essentially is to ask for records that are in existence and then provide you with the full treasure trove of what you're asking for. You're also not allowed to make a standing request. So if you're ever interested in a particular project in town, a building permit or a subdivision, you can ask on the date of your request to be provided with a certain amount of documents that exist. But if there are new documents that are created or come into the town's possession in the future, you have to keep requesting them. There's also a couple of ways that the town can ask for protection from a court if there are truly unduly burdensome requests. I can tell you that those are extremely rare and something that we obviously take very closely, because again, the whole point of the statute is to make sure that information is available to keep it. So this is directly pertinent to you, and you already have a chair who knows very well about the ins and outs of POA through his time in the legislature. But there is required record keeping, and you also have Christina here to help you with that, of course, too. POA requires every public meeting, and we'll talk about what those really are, but this is a public meeting. Every meeting that this committee has in the future will be a public meeting. You're required by statute to record the date, the time and place, and the identity of everyone who's in attendance, at least as far as board members, the results of all motions and votes. And if you're taking a roll call, if everybody's just sticking up their hands and it's unanimous, then that's fine to record that way. But if for some reason you need roll call vote, then the details of that can be recorded too. Are these meetings going to be video recorded?
Right now, they're just audio recorded with slides.
So if you ever needed to know this, in theory, video and audio will substitute for minutes. If you ever needed to, if in a pinch, if someone doesn't take minutes, as long as you have recording with all that information in it, you've fulfilled your requirements under the statute. You don't need to know about conditional approvals or denials, applications or licenses. This board's work, as you know, or this committee's work, I should say, is really to pour over a trove of information that you're going to collect over the next year plus. Digest that and then work with professionals in order to distill that into a final document. So your final vote effectively will be a recommendation of the final product to the town council for adoption. There won't be many intermediate votes in the meantime, with the exception, of course, of the votes you took earlier today. Talked about public access officers and why they're important and who they are. And with that, we can move on really to the meat of what I want to talk about tonight, which is public proceedings. So I think we've already alluded to this on a couple of occasions, but it's very important to remember that a hallmark of the FOA is that public proceedings are open to the public. And that may seem really commonsensical, and it is. But keep in mind exactly what a meeting of this body is. Anytime a majority of you are corresponding or talking about the business of the committee, which of course is creating a comprehensive plan or recommended comprehensive plan, you are, whether you know it or not, having a public meeting that needs to comply with FOA. And the way that that happens is public is given advance notice of that meeting. Public is allowed to attend. And if it's a notice of public hearing, which I'll just talk about in a second, then the public needs to be given an opportunity to speak. So in the context of a select board or a town council or a planning board, that may seem pretty obvious, but what I really want to highlight for members here is to do everything you can to limit conversations, or frankly, eliminate conversations between yourselves, even about the most benign portions of the comprehensive plan, or the data that you're collecting or your ideas about what to do with it until you're sitting around this table. From a really technical perspective, as long as you don't have a majority of you, and it's a big committee, so a majority of you is quite a substantial number, you haven't created a public meeting per se. But I think it's really important to also understand the goal and the spirit of this portion of the law, which is to make sure, especially in later stages, you're going to have a lot of public interest. Hopefully you will. Hopefully people will be engaged in this process from outside of the committee. And if you're discussing topics outside of the context of that meeting, one, like I've mentioned, it could very well be a violation of the Freedom of Access Act. But I think more importantly, it degrades the public's confidence that they are privy to all the information that you're discussing and considering, and that you're taking their input, whatever that input may be, into account. So how can we avoid all this from happening? The biggest thing I'll always say is to avoid email communications, unless we're talking about who is going to be present or who can be present at a meeting on certain date. Taking attendance, taking a roll call like that is perfectly fine. But again, the temptation can often be either on private email, on social media, through text message, any of that. Discussing the substantive topics outside of meetings can lead to problems. So it's really best to avoid those at all costs. Now, I want to be clear. You're all individual members of society. You all have First Amendment rights as American citizens. There's nothing that prevents you from posting on your Facebook page, hey, had a great meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Committee today. Very excited about the future of Cumberland, all of the work that we're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing in state law or constitutional law that prohibits you from doing that. But where the problems can arise is when that leads to back and forth conversations where maybe more members of the committee pop in, and before you know it, you have a text chain or an email chain or a Facebook chain of posts that really are going to start crossing the line into what constitutes an unnoticed public meeting. So may sound a little bit draconian about all of that, but I think both the letter of the law is important to keep in mind, but also the spirit in terms of what it's really trying to accomplish. So remote meetings and remote participation are also possible. The town does have a remote meeting policy, which is rarely used. But let's say there's a massive snowstorm and you all feel compelled that you still need to meet. As long as we can provide you all with internet connections and you have them and you're able to get online, these meetings in theory could happen over Zoom or some similar medium. What will happen in that case, of course, though, is that if all of you are meeting that way, members of the public will be provided with the exact same opportunity to participate and attend in that manner as well. So that is public proceedings, but I want to talk, and this falls really into the category of things that you may want to know, but perhaps don't necessarily need to know to fill your work here. There is a limited number of circumstances in state law where an executive session is permitted. The only thing, and I again can't anticipate how this would be necessary, but where we are often involved is discussing legal rights and responsibilities of a body with the town attorney. We do that often with select boards and councils and planning boards to discuss maybe litigation matters or discuss a thorny topic where there's a discussion or a disagreement about the law. Frankly speaking, I don't anticipate there ever being a need for that to happen, and that really comes down to the nature of how this body is intended to operate. And on that point, I think it's really interesting to look at the mandate that state law gives to comprehensive planning committees. You actually have your own entire section in Title 30A, which controls municipal affairs in Maine. And I thought this was really important. In order to encourage, and this is a direct quote, in order to encourage citizen participation in the development of a growth management plan, which is inclusive of a comprehensive plan, municipalities may adopt growth management programs only after soliciting and considering a broad range of public review and comment. The intent of the subsection is to provide for the broad dissemination of proposals and alternatives, opportunity for written comments, open discussions, information dissemination, and consideration of and response to public comments. So that's sort of the theory and the method behind the madness, so to speak, in terms of how I think state law and frankly best municipal practice continue to operate. Yes.
A point, I was talking to Tig, and it's appropriate that we have never in the town of Cumberland codified the role of the comprehensive plan committee. And in conjunction with looking last night at the ordinance and the duties of the planning board, and technically the planning board is responsible for developing the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan itself is presented first to the planning board and then forwarded to the council. But what we did last night is codify and saying that the council, the planning board will be assisted by a comprehensive plan committee to be constituted and appointed by the town council. And so that way we will be, your official role has now been codified into the town ordinances, and basically you're a staff function to the planning board. And so we've codified that now to go with to be in compliance with the state regulation.
So, Peter, does that mean that you passed a motion last night?
What we've done is we have forwarded an ordinance change to the town council, who is going to be taking it up Monday night.
Okay.
And so if they approve that, then that will be the change to the section of the ordinance dealing with the functions and the establishment of a planning board.
So if the council passes it, we'll get copies and see what the language says and so forth.
Yeah, it's just 2 sentences.
Okay, good.
It is true. I was scratching my head a bit when Bridget asked me to give this presentation, because my first goal was to go through your entire code of ordinances and say, all right, well, what does it say about the comprehensive plan committee? It's not a single reference, there at all, which is not a problem. It's not, there's no problem there. It meant that I had to do a bit of research to figure out sort of where the disconnect is. And I could give you, I could talk to you for a while about sort of how state law has gotten there, and that will bore all of you, or bore me, but it's really, that's a very good step to take, because I think it'll make it clear for the future about exactly what role this body takes. Many planning boards, only part I'll put is that in many smaller towns, especially smaller towns who are just passing zoning ordinances, which is what the trigger is for needing a comprehensive plan in Maine. Most towns don't have that, because most towns in Maine, believe it or not, don't have zoning. But many planning boards, without the help of any other committee, will step into that role and be the original drafters of comprehensive plans. So it's good that you're getting a lot of help with that work here. This goes back again, in case you're curious. The procedures for entering into executive session really require a 3/5 vote rather than a simple majority. Discussion is limited to items that are identified in the motion that's actually made. Perhaps this will make it a little bit easier to follow along with what the town council is doing if they're ever entering into executive session. And the key point, again, sort of going with the transparency theme here, is that executive sessions are for discussion purposes only. They are when there are sensitive topics that, for a lot of good reasons, the legislature has determined need to be discussed in public. But any vote or other formal action that needs to follow that discussion has to be an open session. So a good example is if the town is ever settling litigation, for instance, it happens from time to time. Discussion about the ins and outs of the benefits and drawbacks of a particular settlement agreement or something like that would be an executive session with the final council approval of that agreement, including the text in that agreement, which are both a public record and something that needs to be discussed in open meeting. So, if you're also curious, what happens if a violation of BOA? It's pretty interesting to figure this out. We had a first of its kind Supreme Court case in Maine last year that dealt with the argument of, well, it was the first time that a requester of a record was ever given attorney's fees and civil penalties. So it's a good reminder of what happens. So let's say, for instance, you are actually on the receiving end of a request for public records, and the town, for whatever reason, in good faith or bad faith, doesn't respond to that request appropriately. Either doesn't respond at all, or doesn't provide the requested records, or cites a basis for denial that is appropriate. Someone can appeal to Superior Court. They can request a judge to order the town of Cumberland to turn over whatever records are being requested. And in the very rare circumstances where it's clearly demonstrated that the town or whichever entity the record was requested from was operating in bad faith, then attorney's fees, in fact, can be awarded. I think in this case, we were talking somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 was awarded to the ACLU of Maine. They were requesting records about a confidential settlement agreement with the prisoner who was assaulted in a jail, I think, in Franklin County. So that's what can happen if there was an illegal executive session, again, for your own benefit. In theory, the action that was taken in the executive session, if there was an illegal vote in there, could be ruled void by a court. You essentially would have to have it do over. I don't have an opinion necessarily about whether we think those are appropriate sanctions for violating the act or whether it's too light. I think the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of there is a necessary element of good faith in operating with one another through both these processes that are sort of required. But that's it. And I probably talked about this stuff longer than I needed to, but it's an important topic. I think it's an important knowledge for anybody who's on the municipal board to have. And I'm happy to answer any questions now that I'm here about this or the rest of your process. And obviously can answer questions in the future.
So Ben, you touched on emails and texts and so forth. What about direct person-to-person contact among members, whether inadvertent, you bump into each other at Hannaford's, or whether it's planned?
It's a difficult question to answer, Steve. I mean, I think from a best practices standpoint, you know, the statute is explicit that you are not prohibited from talking with another member of a board that you're on simply by virtue of both being members of a public board. Where things run into trouble are two scenarios that I brought up before. One, where you actually have a physical majority of the board in one place or another. Obviously going to be somewhat difficult in a situation like that. But I think I think it runs afoul of the spirit of the law, frankly, if individual members are using those contexts of those conversations outside of a public meeting, frankly, to avoid having to have those discussions in public, in front of the public. Whether that's an actual actionable violation of POA, I don't really know. I think court would have to decide that. But I think from a transparency perspective, a best practice standpoint, and just a good governance perspective, I don't think there's anything wrong with one or two or maybe three of you. If you have a aha moment, you know, when you're out mowing your lawn or something, you know, like that, and you want to bounce an idea off of another member, I think that's fine. But ultimately, if you think it's a good enough idea to discuss with one member, I think it's probably a good enough idea, should be a good enough idea to discuss with the entire group. And that's really the way that those issues are resolved, is that, you know, this is a unique process in municipal government in the sense that it's really an information gathering exercise more than a decision-making exercise. The comp plan, as you know, is an aspirational document that's leading to zoning ordinance amendments and other ordinance amendments in the future. And so it's really a roadmap rather than, well, maybe that's not even the best analogy. So to directly answer your question, I would try and avoid all of those conversations to the extent that you can. But I think, you know, a small, discrete discussions between one or two members, as long as those discussions are coming back to the full board, I think that's probably okay. But again, I think all of those need to be discussed in the context of overall transparency, and understanding, of course, that ultimately those ideas aren't going to come to fruition if they're not discussed with the whole board. They're not, you know, vetted by the public and ultimately make their way into the final document that you're recommending. So, yeah.
What about subcommittee meetings? As you know, there'll be subcommittees, and is that something that we should be sort of making public ahead of time or recording in some way, or
Yep.
You know, it probably wouldn't be in a majority if it's a subcommittee, but still, you know, it's an official meeting of members of the group.
Yep, I think the best practice is always going to be that if you're forming subcommittees, which I'll leave that to the committee to decide whether they think that's an effective way of doing things. But those meetings would still be open to the public. They should be noticed. There should be minutes taken. I think there are some discrete examples where that would necessarily be required, but I think it's still best practice. Operate as if, you know, any subcommittee that's formed out here is operating under the exact same rules and procedures that you would for the. Evan, I saw a hand. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about if we're using online file storage like SharePoint or something where we're keeping documents. Obviously, those would be available for the public to see. But let's say we're doing some research, like with the Housing Task Force, we were doing research on best practices, things like that, taking lots of notes, multiple people editing the document at one time. I presume like just the final document is open and not every single revision. I think this opens a big question with electronic
note taking, because you'll have 4,000 revisions every time someone adds a space.
So there's a practical answer to that, and then there's a black letter legal answer. The black letter legal answer is, if it's a document that a member of this committee is using and it's directly related to forming a new comp plan, that's a public record. And that includes electronic metadata and all of that. Practical reality, well, whether the practical reality really matters is, I guess, is a matter of opinion. But I think, again, best practice is that if you are, this is not an adjudicatory body where you're prohibited from going out and doing your own research. I had this talk with the planning board on Monday. So it's not as if you're looking at somebody's application and you're going out and having ex parte communications or other things like that. You're allowed to go and do your own research and bring those findings back to the committee. I think that's probably, it's a good practice, but I think, honestly, if there is a public records request to the town for all documents that were consulted by the comprehensive plan committee regarding housing or regarding this, or frankly, if they say all documents consulted by the comp plan committee as part of its work, that document you just described and all the notes that you're taking in it, those are all fair game.
It's right here.
Yeah. Yep. So I think, again, it leads to a good point that perhaps I didn't make as strongly as we should, is that you have to remember that the definition of public record in this context is extremely broad. And so, I think it's important, and again, a best practice and helping protect the town from potential liability, and also helping the public understand the work that you're doing. That if you're looking at a document online, I mean, we're not asking you to, and I don't think there's any case law that talks about having to turn over your browser history or anything like that. But if you're reading a report that was prepared by a think tank or another town's comprehensive plan or something like that, I would encourage you all to save a copy, save it in a folder on your computer, and have it accessible in case anybody ever asks for it. Because I do think, I don't think there's a good faith basis of saying that those aren't public records that will be subject to request.
Other questions?
The other, Evan, if I might too, the other point about, people adding notes as we go too. I mean, I know that that's a really good practice in the workplace. The only thing I'd be, cautious of, remember again, that I think the best practice is that if a bunch of committee members are going to be going in and making comments on a particular document, I think you run mightily close potentially to having an unnoticed public meeting. So I think, again, best practice is to the extent it can be avoided, is avoiding discussing all of these topics outside of this group. I know that is practically unavoidable because we're all human. And like I said, I think with a board of 17, a majority of that is obviously a large group, but I think that line should be remembered and really kept forefront of mind when you're doing.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before too, is to really stay off these local Facebook forums because it's a real temptation. I mean, I'm not on the thing, but I get enough reports from my son and other people on them, but they do nothing really with us getting on and commenting and such. Is basically just poisoning the atmosphere, and it causes more problems than it solves. So I think if avoiding these local Facebook parent forums and everything, and just kind of like Ben says, if you want to talk about something individually, but don't kind of get in on a pissing contest on Facebook, because all you do is just get wet. And tell you how things are changed. I mean, back when we were on in school board meetings in the 80s and council meetings in the early 90s, at the end of the meeting, we'd head off to the Forsyth Tavern or the Muddy Rudder and kind of, well, wasn't this interesting and everything? And of course, but that's how things have evolved. But There was a lot of stuff done in the Forsyth Tavern and other places in those days, and now it's just totally legal, especially with a small board. You can't have any more than 2 people. With 3, it constitutes a public meeting. So it's one thing that we've had to be very, very careful of over the years, but it's evolved.
We're not going to rise after this.
So not going to
Drinks.
rise. No, because we've limited the hours.
Maybe you don't know, but the rest of us.
You can, so to be clear, a couple of things. So you can all go to Rise, talk about the weather, talk about, I don't know, how the Red Sox are gonna be horrible next year once again. You can talk about anything like that you want. Get to know each other. There's nothing in the law that says you can't do that. Just keep in mind, public discussions need to be happening. Obviously, can't tell you not to post on Facebook, but a couple of provisos that I usually put in there are, be careful if you're going to be posting on Facebook. You don't need, none of you, including your chair, whether he's on Facebook, I don't know, Steve, but you don't have the authority to make a statement on behalf of the entire board or of the town. And so be very careful with that. If you need to clarify that in your comment, perhaps consider whether you need to make the comment at all. And just, from a best practices standpoint, a lot of things are said. This is gonna I can't promise that this isn't gonna be a process where people are gonna have strong opinions. I think that's good as part of the process. Consider again whether there's any need to engage in that outside on social media. If at all, I might recommend that the message be, clear that you have a really strong opinion on this, come to the next meeting and talk about it. I think that's what makes a better process. That's more of a Portland resident to me, rather than the municipal attorney talking about those things. We have those problems in our town too. So those are just some suggestions. I think, Peter, the statute of limitations on what the planning board did, 20 years ago, it passed.
So where is the line between having an opinion about a town matter and having an opinion on the comprehensive plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan is a town matter.
Mhm.
I think it's, look, nobody can exclude anybody on this committee from having a strong opinion and voicing it out there.
Right.
But I think it's important to keep in mind also that, you are serving a dual role here. One is as a member of the community, it's a member of Kennebunk. I was in Kennebunk last night, the Cumberland community. But the other is that you've got an elevated role now as a member of a committee that's going to ultimately be recommending a document. So I think that the important things to keep in mind are, for better or worse, what you say on Facebook, especially or anywhere else out in the community, is going to, whether it should be or not, reflected back on the entire body and the town because of your status on this board. And then obviously, I think the real important thing to keep in mind is that you aren't making statements on behalf of the board. Nobody on this board can, and nobody can be making statements on behalf of the town. Beyond that, I mean, the best I can say is use your best judgment. Understand, like we said before, that I think the bigger risk beyond any of that is if there ends up being a prompt for a back and forth discussion and more members of the committee jump in on that, then I think you are getting to the point where people are, the message is going to be, well, the comprehensive planning committee in theory has meetings, but really they're doing all of their discussions on Facebook. Fair or not, that can be what the perception becomes. So I think that's important to keep in mind too.
Ben, at the risk of ruining Bridget's schedule, are there any concerns about individual members calling Bridget with procedural questions or maybe background questions or matters of that nature?
So it's funny, I'm going to give the opposite answer that I gave at the planning board. I don't think there is. So you are what I would call a quasi-legislative body. So your ultimate job, again, isn't to judge a particular application like a planning board or the BAA would. You're making a recommendation on a document that's going to be adopted by the legislative body of the town, which is the town council. So, no, I don't think there's any problem with an individual member calling Bridget and asking her anything that's within her job description. I mean, what time are we meeting? When's our next meeting? Hey, do you have any information? Or more importantly, I think the better question would be, can you bring to the next meeting information about X, Y, and Z? A previous comprehensive plan, statistics that the town might have about this part or the other. My also understanding from looking at your agendas, you're going to be sending out an RFP for additional professional help. And they're, through Bridget and with Bridget are really going to be running a point on marshaling all the information you need and helping you with the process of actually drafting the final document. But short answer is no, I don't think that's a problem. Don't have 7 of you coming in, or 8 or 9, 17. Don't have 9 of you coming into Bridget's office and saying, hey, we'd like to talk about this right now.
Voting.
Anybody else?
I don't think you're right. This is big. Okay, standing room.
Yes, Dave.
I've got one. So by charter, it says that counselors typically don't vote on standing committees. So for example, I sit on the LCC and I don't vote on their matters. So as far as this committee goes, is that a policy that we should adopt, or sorry, what are your thoughts on that, Mr. Attorney?
So funny you asked.
I'm a rule follower by nature.
I did a lot of research on this exact topic in anticipation of when I asked the question. So, it's not an easy answer. So I'll give you the best opinion that I can give you based on what I know. So, for background for everybody, your town charter has a provision, section 2B, that talks about committees that are formed and appointed by the town council and the responsibilities for, I guess what it's garnering. And I'm going to get the notes that I actually prepared for this question here. It says, no counselor shall hold other town elected office or employment, and no counselors shall serve on a council appointed committee except as an ex officio member during the term of which he or she is elected to the council. Funny enough, ex officio doesn't denote voting or non-voting one way or the other. I found multiple references in other state statutes that appoint other boards and commissions that talk specifically about voting ex officio members and non-voting ex officio members. The Latin definition essentially means in something along the lines of in relation to another office, meaning that the 2 town councilors and I suppose the 2 planning board members, although they're not subject to the same charter provision, are appointed to this body by virtue of being a member of the town council or the planning board. With that said, I think, and I understand this may not have been the previous practice in other comprehensive plan committees, and again, this is my opinion, as best as I can give it, is that I think the charter language, as well as the fact that in other committee contexts, specifically recreation and is it coastal commission? It's not coastal commission, but there are other sections in chapter 30 of your code where any town councilor who's appointed to that board is officially a non-voting ex officio member. So I think the intent, even though it could have been clarified and written better in the charter, and by the way, this parallels, there's almost verbatim language like to be in other charters like reports and quorums. Those, frankly, most of them don't even allow town councilors to sit on other committees that are appointed by the council, but if they do, they're specifying that they're non-voting members. So I think the best practice is that town councilors on this body don't vote. From a practical reality, I would say that with the exception of electing a chair and a vice chair, you may decide to form subcommittees or other things like that. In theory, that would require a vote. But ultimately, we're really voting on one thing at the end of the day, which is recommendation of the final product to the council, which of course, councilors who are at the table will have the ultimate authority of deciding whether to adopt or not. So that's my opinion. understand it may not have been past practice, but I think the intent of the charter is that council members aren't voting members here. Frankly, I don't think it has a massive practical effect, but your work here obviously can participate and gather information and join discussions like anybody else would. But I think as a practical matter, the votes that are taken from here on in should exclude council members.
And planning board also.
No,
No.
not to the same extent. So this is a charter provision that only talks about members of the council. And by weird quirk, Peter, we were talking about, Bridget and I were talking about this earlier, is that if the planning board had been the ones appointing all the members of this committee, that may be a different story, but ultimately it was the council.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay.
So, Ben,
Yes.
clarification. The council, in the course of 2 meetings, appointed full membership of this committee. But its motions were silent on any strings attached or limitations on the role of the 2 council reps. Would it be appropriate to go back to the council and say, look, what is your guidance? What was your intent in appointing these 2? Did you intend that they simply sit as observers and participants, but not vote? Or did you intend something different?
I don't think that solves the issue. I would note one thing, whether it was intended or not, the language in the motion that was made to appoint both Bob and take to this body was for them to serve as liaison members, which I think is, and it's also indicative in most cases of non-voting, but still participatory. The problem is that even if the council clarified that they didn't intend those 2 members to be full voting members, the inconsistency is with the charter language. So their intent very well could have been just that. And I have every reason to believe that it would have been, but I think the charter language along with other sections of the code that I think have to all be read in context, lead you to the conclusion that they can't or shouldn't, With that said, put it on the list for future charter amendments, revisions, that the council could look at it. If they want to change that rule, I don't think there's anything that says that they couldn't. And frankly, ex officio is probably read or was intended to mean something that it actually doesn't. But it's a different discussion for a different day.
Other questions for Ben on this issue?
Thank you for your attention. Best of luck with your work. I'll be following it along, and obviously, if there are any legal questions that pop up, what we'd love to do. So,
Hey, thanks for coming tonight.
of course.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you later at some point along the way.
Sure.
Okay, so while Ben is packing up, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is to establish bylaws for the committee. Now, Bridget was in touch with all of us within the past 2 weeks via email, and among other things, she included the draft bylaws for our consideration. And it's a page and a half all told. Bridget, do you want to say anything about what you sent out?
Sure. So Ben actually kind of teed this up for us. There's really no guidance in the ordinances for the comprehensive plan committee, where planning board has some guidance that's provided. Yeah, I have a couple printouts.
Does anyone else need? I'll pass it out.
If we need more, we can get them. So this is just an effort to say, okay, this is kind of who we are and what we're doing. Okay, so the composition of the committee as established by town council. We're going to have a chair and a vice chair, a quorum. What does that mean? What are the duties at the end of the day? What are the duties of the committee? And then this is sort of just assigning me as your staff point person for the town. And then coupled with that are conditions for success, which I think are just group behavioral norms, what we expect of each other, of our level of engagement and support as we get through this together. It's a big effort, and I just thought it was really important for us to establish sort of those ground rules. I'm half glass, half whole person, so conditions for success. In order to be successful, I think we sort of have to make an agreement as a group to do certain things together. And after this is strategically placed right after Ben's presentation, because if there's anything else that came to mind that we want to add in here as, okay, make sure, really make an effort to not talk about this in small groups of the committee or things like that. If there's anything else that came to mind, let's add it in there. Any revisions we want to make, this is not my document, it's your document, our document. So yeah, that was my thought behind it.
Okay, good, thanks. Well, I'm sure that everybody's had a chance to go through this in preparation for the meeting tonight. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions to make?
I guess just what would be helpful for me, is I've never worked on a comprehensive plan. Just sort of like if we could get 5-minute Spark Notes overview of like what the comprehensive plan is, why we do it, what are, I think that would be sort of helpful context. Is that something that you?
Yes, I was thinking of doing that next time around.
Okay.
Plus to include a chronology of events in the past, say 15 to 20 years, starting from the last plan of 09 and several amendments that have happened in the meantime.
Okay, that sounds good.
Which may not be known by everybody. So, yeah, that's part of the plan, Evan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if we do vote to approve these tonight, they can be amended at any point along the line. If something's not workable, if we somehow overlook something. So this isn't necessarily the final word, but it's a very good way of getting started with some sense of what the rules of the road are. So
do we have to include how we're meeting in these?
How we're meeting?
Like here in person?
Well, it says something about
virtual.
Isn't this? Okay.
It's just commitment to
There's something
attend.
about, well, on the second page, make a commitment to attend regularly on time. If unable to attend, notify me and or Bridget. So the theory is, as I read this, is that we meet in person, greatest extent possible, but arrangements can be made for remote participation if necessary.
But we don't have to spell it out in the bylaws technically.
I
if we
think
don't
so.
have to. Okay.
I don't think so.
The only thing I see again, based on what we did last night and codified is that basically the duties of the committee are really to assist the planning board because the planning board is the one by ordinance that's responsible for developing the plan.
Yeah, Peter's absolutely right in his earlier comment when he said that when we come to the end of our line, what we do is report to the planning board, which in turn does its own series of public hearings, may modify or change something that we've recommended. And they then send it to the council for yet another round of public hearings, input, possible change, and all of that. And we get to participate as members of the public and also by virtue of our status as committee members in all of those events.
So that probably, they just changed that to planning board.
Yeah, so the sequel, so the sort of the chain of command is committee to planning board to council.
All right, I see that.
Does a
Sure, Katie.
document say anything about, I apologize, I read it and my daughter forgot her lacrosse stick, so I got all the way to Portland and then the schedule just got all screwed up. But anyway, does it say anything about like there need to be a certain number of us here in order to have and all of that? Okay, good.
9 is a quorum.
All right.
Is it eight?
It says eight, that's the next question. If there's 17 of us.
Yes, well, I swap that out to 8.
So should it be 8 or 9?
Well,
Should be
if
9.
if in fact council is our non-voting members, then it should be 8.
Okay, so we can,
I've got those amendments.
I see.
Older version.
okay.
So Yeah, if the committee chooses to adopt these tonight, then there would just be a motion to adopt them as amended, because I've got a couple
Exactly.
changes, and then. But
Well, I'll make a motion for further discussion. I move that we adopt the bylaws as amended.
Okay.
second the motion.
Was there a
Jesse
second?
beat
down
Jesse
there?
beat your
Jesse.
second.
What?
So we have a motion on the floor, which is still debatable, and there may be other ideas or suggestions concerning further amendments, and now's the time to bring them forward, knowing that we can change things in the future.
I don't know if this is appropriate for the bylaws, but one thing that we do on the council, which can just help with communication, so H rather. If emails come in to say everyone on the comprehensive plan, usually the chair responds, and that's mostly just so that like the responsibility is given to a person, and so that, you're not like, oh no, like, do I need to respond or do I? I think everyone can always chime in. I just didn't know if you wanted to establish any rules of the road in case you get, 15 emails on a Saturday about something that's coming up on the comprehensive plan, and just knowing that there's one person that's going to kind of manage those communication expectations. Just a thought.
Good thought. I guess personally, I'd like to see how it plays out in
Yeah.
practice. And see what Bridget and I can do together in lieu of calling an emergency meeting or something like that. Some sort of unique communication, maybe a better alternative, but
Cool.
we will work that out.
Great.
As it develops. It's a valid point. So, there is an amendment to change the forum from 9 to 8.
I think the most current version online is.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
That-
yes.
Okay, so I do have the older.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Was there an extra copy?
Oh,
that
yeah,
you-
take mine.
Yes. No, keep yours.
Okay, I'll share.
And changing town
Oh, yeah.
council to planning board.
Voting
I
members.
see. Okay, all right.
Or do we have excellent by two? We just won't count them.
Don't count them at all.
15, or either, but.
All right, so if there's no further input, the motion is to approve the bylaws with the single amendment. Well, I guess it's to approve them as printed and distributed tonight. Is that the intent of
It was
the motion?
amended.
With as amended.
Yeah,
amended.
as amended.
With the two amendments.
Yes.
Two, you mean
Changing town council to
to
planning board.
Yes, that's
And
right.
then the
Yep.
day.
Okay.
the-
Discussion, those in favor? Any opposed? Or abstentions? Right, that's it, unanimous vote. Okay. So we'll move on. And the next item is a public comment. Now,
If you choose to allow public comment. I
okay,
guess we could talk about that. I mean, it's a public meeting. At some point, I think we need to allow public comment. If we want to put guidelines around it as a committee, we're allowed to do that. When we want it in the agenda, we can talk about too and all that.
see, that's something I do want to talk about with you, where it fits on an agenda. But we do have a published agenda for tonight's
Yep.
purposes, so I think we're going to live with what we've put out there.
Sure.
So if we go to it now, we don't necessarily preclude coming back to it at the end under new business.
Let's do.
So Shirley, if you had any questions at this point.
My hearing aid, so.
Don't take
borrow
one out.
mine?
Okay.
I'll sit closer.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, there's no public discussion or public comment. So we move on to the request for proposal, review and approval. Again, this is something that was distributed to us earlier, and has this been changed from the original?
There were typos. 2 typos.
Okay.
One that you brought to my attention, the 2 zoning districts in West Cumberland has been changed to 5. And Christina found an is that should have been an in. So,
Yeah, so if you go to the,
Steve, if I could just share something with the group. The agenda that gets published is where you're gonna always find the latest and greatest document. So if you check it, you know, if the agenda came out 2 weeks ago, it behooves you to check the agenda again as we get closer to the meeting and click on the topics and see the most recent document. So that, because usually that's where those typos get corrected and things like that. So I just wanted to share that just as a procedural thing for the group.
And this is also like in planning board or town council, this is totally available to the public. They see all the documents that we do. So there's nothing, no tricks up our sleeve or anything.
yeah, and we can establish like Bridget cannot make any more changes online after this, like more than this many days before the meeting. So,
okay, so, one of the 2 typos that Bridget mentioned is on the top of the 3rd printed page. The 2nd full paragraph beginning West Cumberland centered on the Route 100 corridor. It goes on to say hosts 2 commercial districts. Actually, that should be 5.
zoning districts, so the VOC and.
And that's the result of a committee that met for about 2 years in the first decade of the century. And man, that was short, but we broke it, what previously were 2 commercial districts into 5. That's where it stands still. And if you look at the zoning map, they're colored differently. They're easily discernible. And in the zoning ordinance, the different uses for each zone are definitely set forth. I had 2 other changes to suggest, Bridget, and both of which are also on this 3rd page. The very first line, it reads, Cumberland is home to the MSAD. That might annoy our fellow members from North Yarmouth. I was going to suggest Cumberland is a member of MSAD rather than is home to. We might go on to say that all of the school buildings happen to be in town, but opinions are sensitive on this sort of topic, and I don't want to get off on the wrong foot, even though this is exclusively a Cumberland undertaking. But I just think that might be a perhaps less struggling way of making the same point.
I would need to amend it. As,
Okay,
If you're good with it, if everyone's okay with it, we'll just
okay, we'll just.
get it going.
All right. The other thing I wanted to add under the heading 2009 comprehensive plan, Bridget has correctly said that it was adopted in November 9th, 2009. And it wasn't exactly adopted again on March 24, 2014, but rather was amended then.
Just amended.
Right. I think amended is a better way of sort of stating what was done. In fact, Shirley, you were part of that. You were part of that 2014 review committee, which is quite small compared to the group we have now. Yeah. But also I want to point out that, and this is something that will be in my chronology that I promised you, Evan. From 2014 to 2015, there was a specially appointed group called the Ad Hoc Land Use Advisory Committee, which I happen to chair. It was about as big a group as this one. And we came up with several recommendations to amend the comp plan, which were adopted by the council. So I would conclude that first sentence by indicating that it was amended on March 24, 2014, and again and the date is October 26, 2015. Okay. Anybody else have any?
I don't have anything, but I just want to remind that I have to run to
Oh, that's
basketball
great.
practice, so if there's anything I need to do or say now, I'm happy to do so, but otherwise I'm ready for the next meeting.
You're good.
Okay.
Let me ask, is Thursday nights okay with you?
Yes, so basketball will be done real soon, I hope, so. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Adam, know that if you leave, we're gonna nominate you for others.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Steve, oh, yes, Bob.
My only comment was that this is a draft for, we're looking to hire somebody and first, but I don't think, we don't need to, be too exclusive or too, we're trying to hire somebody.
Right.
Just state something or don't state something. I don't think it's, we want to attract a good player.
Yeah, I just wanted most cases to be accurate so that we all are on the same page. And, I have nothing more to suggest.
This is not gonna be the first time I say this, and it's definitely not gonna be the last, but I'm gonna continue to object to the portrayal of West Cumberland as this now 5. I mean, and I understand zoning and the district and all of that, but I know West Cumberland is gonna be a huge focus for expansion and, I mean, development and density and affordable housing and this, that, and the other thing. It's an inaccurate portrayal of what West Cumberland is. And I would even say the same about the Forest side. It's a coastal mainland. And although it's not on the coast, here's Route 1. Route 1 is a vital part of the Forest side. Well, the center is portrayed as a quaint little hamlet with walkable downtown with cafes. None of them are accurate. So, but I'm going to fight to the death for West Cumberland. It's a lovely, rural, economically diverse neighborhood. It is not a mile and a half of Route 100 with pot shops and gas stations, 3 gas stations.
What I would say in response, Jenna, is that this is not, we're not updating the town's webpage.
This also appears, this is cut and paste from the website, basically anywhere it's used. So
Okay.
Language matters.
Okay, agreed. But this is a business.
But if you're
Offering
asking, if
to-
you're asking a consultant to assist us,
Yes.
they should have an accurate portrayal of what they are selling, is not the word, but
Well,
developing and marketing and messaging, whatever word you would like to use.
Okay.
My suggestion on that is we don't want to rewrite this yet, because really at the end of the day, that's going to be our charge, is to see what is the vision for the town.
But that doesn't mean it can't be an accurate reflection of what it is now.
We can eliminate that from the RFP. We can eliminate those 3 paragraphs from the RFP.
I like that approach a little bit better. I bristle for a little bit different reason than Jana. I don't love well, I'm from this part of town and I'm from that part of town and I only identify with these, types of people so let's just focus a little bit more on the umbrella and certainly in this sort of, draft, this proposal thing, we want people to just, focus on, we want someone to help us with our community. With all of it. And
Because
yeah,
it's
they'll
a
learn about it.
comprehensive plan. It's
Right.
not just a plan for
Right.
Cumberland Center
Right.
or West Cumberland.
Right. Yeah.
Very good.
I would also just say, if I was responding to this RFP, I probably would skip right over that.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yeah, there,
Jump right to the technical
Right,
requirements, I
that-
suppose, but
any
Yeah.
business
Not a hill to die on, as we say.
that's going to respond to this is going to do its homework anyway and
Right.
read our website and,
Yeah,
So
where they will
maybe,
read the same
maybe,
thing. Yes.
maybe the solution is to get rid of the 3 paragraphs. and call it good. If that's
Yeah.
gonna be a sticking
delete
point
the
to
3 you said.
get this
Yeah.
over the line.
Yeah.
because
Yep.
I think
Get rid of them.
We're gonna get the same people to bid on it, whether they
Exactly.
read it or don't.
Okay, so we've discussed several changes. Everybody on board with those changes? Are there,
I did have, Bill, you sent an email out to everybody. In the spirit of what Ben said, I wasn't like, I didn't want to respond. to you.
I understand exactly why. So can I summarize what I was trying to say in there?
Yeah.
So what I was trying to say in there was like, as these folks provide us documents and we get to the point of having to comment on them, right? How do we manage that? Are they going to set up the IT infrastructure to do that? Are we doing that through the town? How's that process going to work? If we want them to do it, should we include that in the RFP, right? And explain that so we know that they have a responsibility for it, but you have the responsibility for it. Right?
Yeah, I think we're looking for them in the RFP, and if this is not clear, we can make it more clear to give us that proposal of what they think is the best practice.
Yeah.
So I've seen other firms go to other neighboring towns and stand up a website, and that's sort of the public facing site. Now, internally, we can have a discussion on how we want to manage documents. Is it a team site that everyone has access to, where everything is just there? Is it SharePoint? Is it printed out documents? Whatever that looks like, you know? But externally, I think we're looking for a consultant to help us do that piece. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of a technical proposal.
So, okay, so then I just didn't see that we asked for that specifically. Maybe I just didn't read it properly.
No, and that's fine. We can add something in there.
all right, so at this point, are folks pretty much on board with the revised language of the RFP?
I have some questions about the selection criteria.
Well, but that's the next subject.
Oh, sorry. Well, no, it says establish of a selection team.
Yes,
On
yeah,
the-
we're right on G1 right now. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess you wanted,
I want to comment on the RFP.
right,
So is that all right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Comment on the RFP, but the selection process would not be part of the RFP.
The selection
Yes, the
criteria.
criteria is in
Oh,
the
the selection
RFP.
team.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to comment on the RFP selection criteria, not the team that's going to be involved in
Section eight.
reading the proposals and making the selection.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
And this might be a question, Bridget, directly for you. The scoring methodology, how are we going to assign scores? Do we have some sort of scorecard that we're going to use? And do the points that we currently have assigned to the 4 different selection criteria reflect the importance of what we're looking for? And then, my other comments that I wrote to myself was that the numerical value should indicate how closely the proposal matches the scope. So when we're scoring them, their score is going to, the higher it is, the more they hit the ball out of the park in terms of their proposal matching what we're looking for. So, but, I see the point system there, but just behind the scenes, when we get into the room as a selection team, are we going to do it? Because, and maybe the rest of you can answer this, or our attorney can answer this.
I'm not an attorney.
Oh,
Yeah, I work with the U.S. attorney.
okay, U.S. attorney. And if we award to a consultant, can our selection be challenged?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our selection, that's just part of the process of any award could be challenged. The front end work of that is to make sure that it can't be challenged,
Right.
that there's no grounds for a challenge. And so I just handed Lorraine a scoring rubric matrix that if you want to pass around, you can pass around.
Okay.
That I've teed up. I didn't put it online. No, it's public information. I just wanted to circulate it first and get everyone's ideas. So we would use that as a method for scoring. That would all the proposals that we receive, all of the scoring rubrics from the selection committee would all then be public record. And if anybody wanted to challenge, they could.
Okay. because one of the things, and now I think you remember this, I was a contracting officer for the Department of the Navy. So this is what I did for a living, was issue RFPs and award contracts. And basically whatever we say we're gonna do is what we have to do. And then you're challenge proof. If we said what we were gonna do and that's exactly how we did it, then so sorry that you lost, but there's no grounds for a protest. So, okay. So I'll look at this.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to build off that. You know, I do a fair amount of RFP responses for engineering firm I work for. And, you know, some things I've seen is like, we'll submit something and then a client will be like, oh, yeah, that would be really helpful. We didn't even think to put that in our RFP. And we're not all professional comprehensive plan compilers. So I understand like when the federal government is very strict on their selection criteria, but I also wouldn't want to paint us into a corner where we don't do this every day when we're trying to decide if a RFP comes back and there's something that we didn't consider. And in my mind, I guess, as long as you're having that discussion and it's public and you're like, well, we just, you know, in the end, we chose firm XYZ and they added this value to the project that we hadn't thought about, that is, you know, not bulletproof, obviously, but that it's fair and open, which I think is the intent. That's my thoughts on that.
Okay, that was all I had. Okay, thank you.
Other input? So Bridget, are you comfortable then with our discussion so far and the changes that we?
Yeah, Bill, do you have a specific spot where we need to add something?
No, Richard, I don't. I just was just, yeah, so.
If I could just jump onto that, Bill, I was reviewing, it's in the, probably in the task section, probably right before vision. My suggestion would be, you know, the consultant or propose the selected consultant, I'm trying to say, interested parties may propose. If I'm understanding what you're talking about, is that we'd be interested potentially in folks being able to, we're going to do all these tasks, we're going to collect all this data, and we're also going to provide potentially the infrastructure by which we will share this.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Right.
Oh, see, yeah, so I read that as the public engagement piece.
Okay.
Engagement and dissemination. Does that cover? Because you're talking like Falmouth's website, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I was
They're
thinking,
comprehensive, or Yarmouth's for that matter.
sure, I was thinking more of just managing the deliverables of the project and how we were gonna, right, when they gave us documentation, we were gonna work on documentation, you know, as a committee. How do we handle that? Maybe that's more the mechanics of the committee and how the committee's gonna work. But we're gonna ask the consultant to do that and manage that, how they do that, and then just things like native file format, stuff like that, and what are they gonna give us? Maybe it's a little bit too in the weeds, and we can.
I think that's
discuss
probably
that.
something we can work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think standard formats would kind of be my general answer.
I would guess the folks that were going out to do this for a living, and there's a standard file format that you use, so. But
I think I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, do you need action from us to authorize you to actually send this out? I know you have a proposed timetable, which is tight,
Yeah,
but we need to get started.
we do. And I really feel like we can't really get started without that consultant. So, yeah, so I would like you to, to vote to release the RFP, but look at the timeline. And then look at the selection team that I've recommended. It was highlighted in yellow. It's just a subset of folks and includes town staff, town council, because it is town money. So at the end of the day, they're the ones who have to allocate the funds. Let me go back. The funds have already been set aside, but they're the ones who have to say yes. So me, the town manager, the planning board chair or their designee, the town council chair or their designee, and then the comprehensive plan chair or their designee, and 2 comprehensive plan committee members is what I'm proposing for the selection team. And then we would figure out what the best method is for doing that. If we just like have a powwow and, all come prepared, having read all the proposals and go through our rubrics. We'll figure that out when we get there. But if that committee's fine, then I just kind of need thumbs up. If we have discussion around that, we can change it.
Is it too much to have everyone on the selection committee? I haven't done this before, so just, I'm happy to hear the answer, yes.
Be a little unworkable.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, just curious.
My only thought is, should it be an odd number of people? And not an even number of people?
It's 7.
It's a,
Oh, okay.
So do you want those committee members who are interested to step forward tonight?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody interested in serving on the selection?
Yeah.
You'll be.
I'd be happy to do
Well, no,
it.
your experience.
Yeah.
Although my MOS in the military was procurement, but that was 55 years ago.
I used to buy weapon systems, so this will be a breeze.
Yeah, you're all set.
Yeah.
Run the slot machine operation and book entertainment.
All right, we're discussing who may be interested in serving. So,
Well, I guess I would be interested, but I'm wondering, conflict of interest. Who's bidding on these engineering consulting firms?
They're released publicly to
Historically,
anybody. So I've seen the majority of them are planning consulting firms.
I asked because this is something I would like to do. I kind of work in this realm. I work for an engineering consulting firm, but they have an office here in Portland. I don't work in the Portland office. I work in DC, and I wouldn't want any sort of conflict of interest. I don't think they would bid on something like this, but I wouldn't want to be like.
Maybe it's something that you could be appointed, and then if it did become a concern, you could, step down.
So when,
Yeah, I'll happily jump in for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my
After
only
recusal, so,
hesitation.
yeah.
when Yarmouth posted theirs, they received 3 responses, one from Barry Dunn, one from North Star Planning, and one from Stantec.
Okay, so like 2 of those aren't even our competitors of my company, so I would feel pretty good about that unless it was.
Once we,
Receive similar pool of people, or
I don't know, when did Falmouth do theirs?
are they in the process, or they just finished? Did they both go?
Report's doing theirs right now. I don't know about Falmouth.
all right, so Evan has volunteered.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that'd like to volunteer?
I'll fill in if somebody fails, but. Yeah.
I'll volunteer if nobody else wants to.
Okay, Jana has volunteered. Anybody else want to, or are we comfortable with those who have stepped forward?
Good.
Good. Okay, so we have our 2 committee members. And you've asked for approval of the RFP for release, like a vote of the committee?
Yep.
On that, or just a sense of the committee?
What is the format of the release? Is it like newspapers? Is it just mail? Is it?
I'll post it. I'll share it out to the Northern New England Planning Listserv.
Probably
It
MMA.
hits out. Yep, it'll be on our website. I don't know if it'll hit newspapers. I don't know if we're required to have it hit newspapers. Okay, but we can find out. And then just quickly to review the timeline. I would get it out Monday before noon. We would accept questions that we'll handle like internally or amongst the committee. And we'll respond to those questions. And then the submission deadline would be Monday, February 24th. And so I haven't estimated a turnaround time for that and when we would make the award. But somewhere that week of February 24th, we would want to be available to do the review and maybe sit down and have that selection meeting. The other thing that's in here, we reserve the right to ask for interviews or more information from anybody who responds to the RFP. So if that's something that the committee decides that they want to do, of course, everyone would be invited. But we could invite folks in to present really what they're going to do, their scope. So everyone go with that? I think I would I don't know. If you want to vote on approving the release, then I'll have my bases covered.
All right. Then, I'll take a motion then to.
So moved.
approve the RFP for Nancy seconds. Further discussion, seeing none. Those in favor? Any opposed? Right, that's a unanimous vote. Bridget, you have your.
Yay!
Clearance.
We'll have our consultant.
Okay, so as far as tonight's agenda goes, that takes us down to administrative matters and new business. I don't have a formal list, but I do have a couple of thoughts that I wanted to raise. And the first one sort of dovetails with the RFP and so forth. If you read the current plan and the ad hoc committee's plan for 2015, you'll note that a public survey was one of the first steps in the preparation of the plan. And so I want to talk about how that may play in with what we are going to do in our entire process. Now, curiously, I shouldn't say curiously, ironically, the town council had a public survey done in February through April of 2022, just under 3 years ago. Now, that did not result in any major amendments or any amendments to the comp plan. Maybe a few ordinance tweakings here and there, but nothing too major. So one option is to say, well, we just did a survey in the recent past. We can go with that.
What was the survey in 2022? Wasn't that just rental housing?
No, that was they used all the same questions that they used in the survey for the 2009 plan. Duplicated each question, so you could do an apples to apples comparison.
I have it right here if you want to look at it.
How many responses did you get?
A lot.
Yeah, I don't remember that. My memory is short too.
That's something I want to make sure gets circulated.
Oh, yeah, I can send it around to
Yeah,
everyone.
no, I'm just letting you know that's part of the plan. So the other option, in light of the fact that people moved into town in the past 3 years and those newcomers would not have had a chance to.
Is that on the website?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
Tam,
I
we
think
don't
it's
need to send it out.
appropriate.
You can go get
I
it there.
can send it out right now.
Yeah, sure.
Because those who are newly arrived in town have not had a chance to express an opinion on these planning related issues. The other option is to do a new survey. My personal feeling is that we should do a new survey. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same one that was done 3 years ago. What I think we need to do, if our goal is to do a new one, we should take a look at exactly what the old one from 3 years ago looked like. Okay. Because we may not want to ask all the same questions. We may want to ask more, which I think is frankly more likely than not. Or we may want to revise the language. Or we say, this is the survey we're going to go with.
Well,
So I'd like a kind of a sense of whether we want a new one or.
Well, my thought that the survey that we did, I mean, if you haven't read this 2009 plan, I mean, this is basically the plan that we've been running on for really since 2009. And since that time, the demographics have totally changed. We now have, in a 12-year period, we turned over 40% of our houses. So the town demographic has changed. And the thing is that probably 95% of what was outlined in that 2009 plan, amended in 2014, has been done. we've got the beach, we've got Knights Pond, Blueberry Hill, we've got a lot of those things. So the demographics have totally changed. The needs and the controversies in the town have totally changed. And so I do think we need to spend some time on a new survey because the total circumstances have changed from that time, and we've got a whole bunch of new challenges and demographics that we didn't have by that time. And also, that 2009 survey was a huge building block from where we came off, and a lot of the plan we developed came out of the survey, and we had tremendous response. I mean, it's a thing that you just can't put it out on a internet because you still got folks in town that don't use it. So, I mean, we had something like a 40% response on this survey. I mean, unheard of in general surveys. So we got a cross section of the town because we made sure the retired people that didn't have computers and all that. So we got a true cross section of the town. And we had the other part of the thing is that, okay, you want to do stuff. Are you willing to pay taxes for it? And so everybody wanted beach and where everybody wanted the thing, but when the rubber came to the road, okay, will you accept hence? So I do think that the conditions have changed so much in 25 years that we need to invest a significant amount of time in designing this survey so that we do know what most of you folks that are new members say over the last 25 years, you may have a totally different viewpoint than, and as I've said to Vail many times, that you look around at the problems we have and the enemy is us. We created this damn paradise 25 years ago that everybody wants to move into. And so now we've got to live with this and figure out where we go from there. So I do think that we need to spend some time that people are smarter than my pay grade that do this stuff for a living to design something that gives us direction.
So how do we implement that? Sorry.
I mean, I would just say that because I was also on the Affordable Housing Task Force a few years ago. We looked at the survey because that 2022 survey was very fresh. One thing stood out to me then and does now, that there was, yes, Peter's, I'm not disagreeing with that a lot of things in those earlier plans has come to fruition. What hasn't is the affordable housing piece. And that was something way back 16 years ago that was a problem. And the one thing that we discovered in our Affordable Housing Task Force was when we had all of these people in the room, had different perspectives, was no one really had a great definition of what people meant. Everyone, like the question was basically, do we want more affordable housing in Cumberland? And most people said yes. There was like 60 or 70% of respondents said yes to that question. But when you drill down and you ask people what that means, that's when it gets complicated, right? And so I would like to see a new survey that gets a little bit more into the weeds on that, because that is a problem we haven't solved.
Sure. And tell me what rural character is.
My backyard.
More true to that than you know.
Is our expectation that the consultant is going to be helping to facilitate that survey as well? That I don't think we call it out directly as a deliverable in the RFP, but I would imagine that that is one of the data collection pieces that they're going to recommend. And I would imagine they will look at what we've done in the past and can it be refined to get us additional information that needs to be for the new plan.
Let me just go to Phil first and then.
No, my question, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, definitely agree with the new one, but I think it has to expand beyond what Cumberland has done in the past.
Yes.
And the reason I say that, and I'm gonna keep going back, I have Falmouth and Yarmouth right here as a matter of fact, but they both did phenomenal job involved, particularly Falmouth, in involving the public, in making sure they had tremendous response to surveys, to meetings. I remember you specifically in the housing minutes asking, should we have town hall type meetings to solicit more opinions, and being told by the chair, not the chair, the liaison from the town council, no, you represent their voices. We don't represent their voices. We represent some of their voices, and we're doing the legwork for them, but it has to be beyond. We're not updating 2009, which was updated in 2014. Like there's other better examples. I know we're great. we're awesome, but there are better examples of towns and cities who have done this better than we. And if we do it the greatest ever, there'll be somebody who will top us, hopefully. But I think we should look at other, not just local, but there's certainly we're not the only ones undertaking this. There are several that have done. So, I mean, even talking to them and asking what their process was, I think would be helpful for those of us who have never done this before. But looking at what their question, because they have very, very similar issues that we do.
I just wanted to add that also perhaps besides local municipalities, the COGS, GPCOG and AFCOG could certainly be resources for this. I bet that they have something that they do in this eventuality in all the different towns that they work in.
So I'm hearing a pretty strong consensus for a new survey. Yeah. Which I certainly agree.
If it would behoove the committee, I can post the questions on our comprehensive plan, our current website. Here are the responses from the 2022 survey. They are just accessed right from the homepage. You view all of these headlines down towards the bottom. There's the community survey results. The results are posted. I have all of the verbatim questions that I can post to our comprehensive plan
That would be good.
I think that would be
Really good.
website. The other thing. Here, we do have this website. We're reading my emails. Come to this website. So I can add links and all that stuff up here, so I can add more information. I'll check this every once in a while and see what else I posted up. The other thing I wanted to mention is, yes, the GPCOG is the Greater Portland Council of Governments. They've been a resource, an actual like a free resource to the town through grants that they have and grants that we've gone after with them. And we're actually working right now on two that the town council is already aware of. One is on sort of affordable housing. Yes, that I'll just say that. And then one is like, what is the analysis of town land and what could we do with it? Are there zoning changes? Are there ordinance changes that we could look at to make it easier to use town land for potential affordable housing, or in general, ordinances and zoning? Are there changes that perhaps we should consider to just make housing, affordable housing, easier for everybody in the town? I mean, above and beyond what's allowed with ADUs and things like that through the state level. That is going to feed the comprehensive plan. So it's not immediately going to feed council for any action. It's going to feed us with more information. So GPCOG is doing that already through grants that exist. So that'll just be more to come as we look at subcommittees, and if housing ends up being one of them, we'll have that consultant help us through that, and GPCOG will be around. And yeah, but I will get the survey up.
Good. Okay, that'll be helpful. Good. Okay. So it's understood this will be part of the RFP.
Yeah.
Part of the consultant's production will return to us. Yeah. Okay, good. I like the idea of a new survey.
Yeah.
Just a few housekeeping details. Somehow we managed to get everybody together on a Thursday night, and I guess de facto, this is our night of the week to meet. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
All right. Bridget, did you have the next meeting date in mind? I know that your timetable for the RFP is toward the end of February. Did you want to meet before then or?
Would it be helpful to have? You're working on your history. Would it be helpful to have sort of like some presentations at an interim meeting before we get a consultant on board?
Okay, maybe.
Talk through your history and maybe I can invite Yarmouth in who recently did theirs, or Falmouth, and see if anyone wants to come and just give a brief overview. I know I've already spoken with a few of the neighboring planners, so I may be able to invite them in one evening. So I guess if we pick a target for that, I can see if folks can make it.
Okay, so I don't have a calendar with me. Do you know what the date is? Say 2 weeks from tonight? We've got school vacation in February.
Yeah, so school
February 6th.
vacation starts the 17th. We could do like the 13th is 3 weeks from
The
tonight.
13th, just a heads up, there's a joint meeting of the school board, the town council, and the North Yarmouth Select Board. So if we could avoid the 13th, Jesse, Bob and I would be happy.
There's a school board meeting the Thursday before that as well.
Yeah.
You guys are changing the night of the week, your meeting?
2 weeks from tonight.
That's school board.
That's school board.
That's school board.
We could do,
Doesn't work for me.
how's Wednesdays?
What's Wednesday? The what?
Wednesday.
I don't know, the 12th?
You've got ordinance.
Peter and I have
Wednesdays, but
that particular
Ordinance, is that Wednesdays or
booked for
Thursdays?
Society.
Yeah.
We moved, right?
No, Denise can't.
Thursdays.
You can't do Wednesdays.
Great.
Wednesdays are good.
Yeah, me too.
The 29th.
Well, sure, all that.
30th.
It's just,
I know
that's
Wednesdays are
the-
really bad for
gonna be
Denise
the
generally, so
cover.
if you
Well, let me
move
ask this,
ordinance to
school
Thursday.
vacation week,
could be
are
here
the people who are gonna be away? Look at you, all right.
Well, the other thing is we do it, we record it. Folks watch it, catch up, or I could actually broadcast to teams, not that you want to do that when you're doing something fabulous on vacation. You know, it is a big committee, we're probably not all.
I know, inevitably.
And if we're ad hoc scheduling meetings, it's a little bit harder. So
Yeah.
if we, you know, depending on when we want to set the cadence, you know, until then, we'll just do our best.
So what is the Thursday of school vacation week?
20th.
20. Okay, those of you who are gonna be gone, are you okay with what you just said?
I mean, I'm a history person. I'd like to catch up on the history for sure. So I'd be a little bit sad to miss that, but I'll be
Sure.
okay.
I will record them. They will go to the town's YouTube site, so.
So if we're getting the submissions back to the 24th, would we actually, the subcommittee might be looking at them that week, but with the 27th?
We could do,
Could we still,
we could meet the 27th too. We might not have a decision.
well, that's what I'm saying, like, would we make a decision? Could we do all of this on the 27th? And then the subcommittee can figure out when it can meet to go through.
Oh, right.
Well, the question was whether we wanted to take advantage of the time between tonight and the submission deadline.
Oh, I know that.
To get historical stuff out on the table and documents and other reference materials. And we're struggling at finding a nice day and nice Thursday in February.
What about a Wednesday?
Yeah, not to throw a wrench in it, but with school board meetings on Thursdays, and also typically we've been having ordinance meetings on Thursdays. Would Wednesdays be a possibility, or is Thursday just sort of better for the entire group? Want to just throw it out there?
We can get our ordinance committee to meet earlier in the day.
Yeah. Not for the people on ordinance that are working full time, I think. And I know that if.
Oh, I'm not working full time?
Well, no. You work for, you own the company, so, I was just saying, I know Denise can't do Wednesdays, so if we move this to Wednesdays, Jesse wouldn't have a school board conflict, you'd be able to have ordinance on Thursdays. Scott just told me Wednesdays are good to him, so just throwing it out there, not to ruin everybody's.
All right.
We want to do a straw poll?
Every 2 weeks. on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think we need a cadence too, every 2 weeks and.
Yeah, the three of us had that
Yeah.
Wednesday,
We
one
could,
Wednesday.
we could do looking too at the room availability.
Yeah, so the room availability.
So we could do the 12th. We could do the 26th. We can do the 5th. Not the 5th. It looks like we could do the
Would,
Wednesday's not good.
how often do you think we're gonna meet? Generally?
Every 2 weeks,
Every 2 weeks?
the rest of your life.
After we get a consultant.
Can we?
Well, my question was, it gonna be every 2 weeks or is it gonna be twice a month? 'Cause some,
Probably
If
twice.
you do it every 2 weeks, you don't have to do the calculation.
well, then you just said the repeating thing on your, I just said everything for like the 5th Friday of the month,
Right?
5th Friday.
Show me fifth grade.
What
Yeah,
about,
sure.
is Tuesdays bad? Is that Tuesdays bad?
I have
We
to
can
admit, I
do
would prefer
Tuesdays
Tuesdays
except
or Thursdays.
for
I'm off
every
to
third
most
Tuesday.
So
Monday or Thursdays? We could do off.
The only
council
day
days.
that I really don't wanna do is Friday night, so.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah. Against the law. No.
All council nights isn't a bad idea. Just do off council night.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah.
The 13th was the big joint meeting.
Thursday,
the
Thursday, the 13th.
Okay.
We're just suggesting off council day for Mondays, if that's.
Doesn't somebody else speak Monday night on the first and third?
Lions.
My work for the Lions Club.
Yep. So if you started at 6, you'd miss that then, wouldn't you?
We can do Monday nights.
Well, Monday, the 10th of February?
There's a town
That all
council
right?
meeting.
That's right, that's
Okay.
the second.
So we'd have to do the 3rd,
And then every 2 weeks after that.
the 3rd, the 17th.
Okay, 17th is school vacation.
Yep.
24th is,
17th is also a holiday.
Maybe 24th.
Let's just do the
Well, I
23rd.
thought Thursday was working for
Yeah.
most people,
Oh,
but we've
24th.
just got the mock-up of, the joint meeting, so I mean, Thursday seemed to work for everybody. Why don't we sort February,
Didn't Jesse have
No,
the
Jesse's
meeting
got the school
Thursday?
board though.
You've got school board, but it's like twice a month. So there are Thursdays I'm free and then there's 2 Thursdays a month where I've got school. board.
and which Thursdays, second, fourth, or? first?
We'll do it. First
How-
and-
How about we set the next meeting?
yeah.
And do it during February break. I can use technology and email out something. Yes.
Yeah.
Cause there's no other meetings for the
So
town.
while they're busy, they can watch it
All
on
right,
Zoom.
so you're suggesting.
Well, and then when
Third
you get
circle
home, you can watch it on the
So could you set the 20th?
Availability.
20th. Is 6 o'clock fine?
Yeah.
I like to just go to
Yes.
bed early.
Yeah.
Food stuff is still open.
Yeah, I think we're trying to.
The only thing for me at
Start,
6
get it
is
done,
I'm
go wherever we go home.
working at my desk until 6.
And eat supper.
So
Me too.
Who does that? to you?
if I'm the.
6:30.
Stop.
I think for me selfishly, like my kids are in sports, so a lot of times games are before them, so I can at least go to some of it.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm missing a basketball game. So I totally get it. No. Yeah.
All right, so it'll be the 20th of February, 6 o'clock, right here.
Yeah.
You can book the room, as Bridget, in perpetuity or whatever. So we,
I'll
That was the 20th, right?
finagle some
All right.
technology thing to figure out cadence.
I moved. to-
Okay.
All right.
the final thing, is there a strong, well, the people have different preferences as to how they receive materials. Do you want to go pure electronic, some paper?
I like
Do you-
the combination. I thought
I-
that worked well in our last committee.
Yeah, I kind of, that kind of guy too.
And if anyone needs prints, I'll lean towards digital, print out agendas. If anyone needs prints, just let me know.
Send everything to us electronically and then have paper copies for us when we get here.
But it's like 20 copies for everybody?
No.
No,
Okay, a couple.
Does everybody have the 09 plan?
Yeah. And when you say send electronically, I mean, are you requesting emails to the entire group or go to the agenda and go through the links to the links? It seems as though we can find it that way
I'll
too.
send, yeah, what I'll do is before a meeting, I'll send out an email similarly. Like Steve and I will work through an agenda. I'll send out an email and say the agenda is posted and any associated documents would be linked to
In the agenda,
Yeah.
just punch on the item.
Yep.
There.
I'm getting up to speed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then any
Sorry.
supporting documents that we get, like the survey, I've put all of the old comprehensive plans in here at just direct links to them. The ad hoc advisory committee report is linked in here as well, if you want to take a look at that. The survey, any important document, I
It's
might
gonna
put,
be under comprehensive plans. You
Committee,
said the
yeah.
link is there.
yeah, you're in boards and committees,
Yeah,
you have comprehensive plan committee 2025.
yeah.
Right here. Your names will all show up here soon.
Oh, and this is where the link to everything is, right?
Yeah, and I'll add more links. Your agendas are down here.
Okay.
So you just click where Bridget was just hovering, where it says comprehensive plan.
Oh, okay.
All these are links.
Literally
Comprehensive
not do
plan.
that.
Have all of the information. Previous versions, like the design standards, there may have been versions adopted after those ones, just as a note, that says previous versions for a reason. And if it's helpful, if anyone wants to read the main statute, I can send that out. I think I PDF'd it for Steve. I can actually just put it on here. Yeah. That, that's really where the consultant's gonna help us. They're gonna really know that statute and what's required. That report.
Are there any previous comp plans other than 2009? Anything back further than that?
98.
Yes.
Yeah. There's an open space plan, there's a comprehensive plan. I can find other versions.
I think we did one in 98 too.
You want all those? For some light reading.
Well, careful what you ask for if you get into rereading the 98, the 89 plans.
Yeah.
Um,
But it traces evolution.
it does.
More for like,
If they're up there, it's your choice to use your time to
go to
read them.
Moorhead, Minnesota. Their plan is interactive storyboard. Oh, it's lovely.
Okay.
Okay.
All set for the next meeting. Anything else tonight?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We're returned after 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Not too bad.
Great, good job, folks.
You're on the final plan.
Well done.
In that, the first plan is, the first page is 8.5 by 11, and every other page is like 11 by 17. So there's no way to print it out. No, it doesn't. It's not even set. You can print it as a booklet. Oh, like, what was mine?
I sure did.
It looks great. Like, I kept trying to figure out how to print it. And there was.
Yeah, they printed me in a high.
But it also-